This week on the Sunday Glide, I'll be introducing you to the latest addition to my quiver, as well as my latest edit, showing footage from my first surf on the board. We'll then run through longboard design and what I think everyone should know before buying their new longboard, before we go into tip time, a dive into your questions. This is my new board. Super stoked to finally have it. As you can see, it's pretty similar to the pink one that I had. Essentially, just over time, I've had that pink board for 2 years now, and I wanted to make sure I had something very similar, something to take to some contests coming up, but yeah, obviously the pink one has got a few dings in it, so just wanted to make sure that I had an updated version of that. Super stoked with the result. Had a surf on it earlier today, which you'll see coming up in this edit, and it goes insane. So the main differences I noticed from this one is that it still holds on the nose really well, but I feel like the rails are a little bit more refined, so just a touch knifier, and it might be a little bit lighter than that pink one as well. And so what I feel like that allows for though is just for it to be a little bit more dynamic off the tail, like when I'm trying to turn and when I'm trying to do some bigger cutbacks or some bigger off the tops. And so that was super fun. It had a really nice and lively feel to it. It's still very stable, and it still very much feels like it has the stability and the ability to lock in on the nose the same way that the other board did, so the way that the pink board did. So super stoked on that. I think this board's going to be really good for just your everyday beach break conditions, and that's why I do have a board like this. Obviously, something that I'll talk a little bit about is in the later part of this edit is the differences you want in your boards between having perfect point break conditions versus your everyday kind of beach break conditions. I think boards like this, which this one does have a little bit more rocker to it, as I've discussed in previous videos, I think it really helps out for those beach break conditions. Bit of a light wax job at the moment, but I will get on top of that ASAP. But yeah, it's just got a really nice steady wide deck to it. All the way from the tail here, you can see it's about a 9-inch pod, coming all the way through to the nose where it's still got a lot of width through that. This one as well has wide point in the middle, as you can see. Find that's really good for the safety in your boards, particularly if you're worrying about contests and things like that. Out of this board, what I really wanted is I just wanted something super reliable to take away to some contests that I've got coming up. Unfortunately, I had to pull out of Mexico so that I could compete in a qualifying series event coming up on the 27th of April, so super excited for that. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was all set and ready to go for there. It's at a beach break. I wanted to make sure that, again, I've got a log that's nice and responsive, but will lock in the hang tens in less than perfect conditions, which I feel like this will give me. And then I've got some other contests coming up, one in New Zealand as well. Super stoked on this one. So what we'll do now is we'll head through to the edit of my surf on this morning. Again, waves were fun. We've had some super fun conditions coming our way over the past couple of days, so I was happy to get out there, happy to give this board a go. Let's head to the edit. Yoo! We're going to beach break and turn well. So I just wanted to really quickly run through the biggest things that I think you should consider before you're actually buying a longboard. I quite often see people wondering, I guess, what sort of board they should get, what dimensions should they have, but I think the most important thing to think about is what sort of rocker you should have in your longboard. It really differs depending on what sort of waves you have around your area. So if the waves are going to be more beach break, chunky conditions, or whether you live at Noosa, you live at Malibu, places like that where you've got a really nice point break, predictable conditions. For the point break style conditions where you've got a nice, fast, down the line wave that's very predictable, it's really good to have a flatter rocketed board. So a flat board essentially will allow you to have maximal speed, and you won't need to worry about how the board is going to potentially nosedive or get through chunky conditions because the wave is going to be more perfect, for lack of better words. It's where you have the beach break style conditions, similar to the ones that I was just writing in this edit, that you do need to make sure you've got a board with a little bit more rocker. I think there's an advantage of that. The advantages of having more rocker in the board are going to be essentially when you lock into the nose ride, you're going to have a little bit of a safety net at the nose ride. So instead of at the last minute, if you do have that board taking a negative trajectory or a downwards trajectory towards the face of the wave, and you're risking nose diving, it gives you a little bit more wiggle room to come off the nose, and it's just that extra safety net. On top of that, it almost acts as a bit of an anchor, so the tail of the board will sink in to the back of the wave much more, I feel. Not to say that can't happen in a flatter board. Quite often in the flat boards there will still be a bit of tail kick so that we can nose ride and have that really nice locked in feeling. That's a super important part of a nose rider and the main area that will contribute to a board nose riding well. But that can have a bit of an effect if the overall rocker in your board is a little bit more as well. The biggest thing for turns is going to be considering for beach break conditions where you might not have a perfect waves to complete your turns. The waves might be a bit fatter. It is good to have the rocker because you can actually disengage the rail a lot easier. If you think about stepping on the tail of the board, if you've got a rocketed board, then you're going to have more rail disengaging more quickly, and therefore there's less of a chance of bogging the rail because you're going to have less rail engaged. And we know that through having more rail engaged in the water, when you're not going quite as fast, that's how we bog a rail. For point break conditions though, essentially what you're expecting is you're going to be able to be turning in more critical part of the wave. And that's where, the flatter board and maintaining the speed through those turns is going to be really, really good. On another side point, I like to have the wide point back for your point break conditions as well, because having that wide point back allows you to engage that rail so nicely. And I think that's the best feeling, or the best feeling you can get out of a turn, having a flat board, wide point back, and where you're jamming into the rail in a nice critical section. There's nothing better than that. That being said, if you are surfing less perfect conditions like a beach break, and you're not always going to have the right conditions, so it's probably good to have one of both in your quiver. But yeah, if you're not surfing conditions that are perfect, then it is good to also have that wide point in the middle, because I feel like this provides a more reliable and a more safe sort of feeling throughout your turns. That's just what I found anyway. I'm not a shaper. I've never shaped a board, so please don't take this as advice from a shaper. It's just from my experience in, I guess, contributing to some design with boards, and then also just, thinking about different design aspects as well, and how that has, I guess, influenced my surfing and what's worked, what hasn't, because I've gone through a couple of boards. And I think that I've just been able to develop a little understanding throughout that process, but definitely not a shaper. If I've said something wrong, make sure to check me. I'm happy to have a chat about that. If there is anything that I haven't chatted about with regards to board design and what you think is beneficial to know before you're buying a longboard, pop that in the comments as well, and we can see if we can do a bit of a dive into that next time. Okay, so let's get into tip time. This is a segment where I go through the questions that you guys ask. If you have any questions for next time, please put them down in the comments below, and we'll be selecting a few to put in this segment in future edits. So the first one, or the one that I wanted to go through today, is a question asked by Rick, and it was a really good question. It's with regards to whether we actually are allowed to do any shuffling, or whether it's purely just cross-stepping. I think this is almost a question that's sometimes whether we don't know whether we should ask or not, because cross-stepping is obviously the preferred way to get to the nose and back from the nose. So here's my take, and you can feel free to correct me on any of this. But personally, I think with respect to getting to and from the nose, we do need to make sure that they are very clean and well-paced cross steps. So if we are shuffling to the nose or shuffling back, I think that's an area where if we are doing that, we can consider cleaning that up by making sure that we're cross-stepping. That includes, sometimes I know there's a habit of doing 2 cross steps and then a shuffle to make that extra distance so that we are hanging 5 toes over. And I think we can correct that by making those 2 steps bigger, or what more commonly happens is we add in 4 steps and make sure that we space those steps out correctly so that we can get to the nose. There is a way to make sure that you can space those steps out correctly to, I guess, avoid getting too close to the nose so that we do end up with just a shuffle or end up missing the nose. So that's something we can speak about. But I definitely think that we need to encourage, I guess, the practice of making sure we get to and from the nose without any shuffles. Now, where I think we can potentially start to consider some corrections, so we can call them shuffles, but also corrections, is little tweaks in foot position, particularly with regards to when we're at the tail and we want to step further back towards the tail to make a big turn happen. So this isn't with regards to maneuvering up and down the board as such, it's correcting your position, because potentially if you stay where you are, that back foot or that front foot is going to be a little too far forward, and when we engage the turn, then we're not going to have enough weight over that pivot point, over the tail, and so then we're going to bog a rail because we haven't been able to disengage the rail properly. I think that's a really good example of where a little correction and a little shuffle is okay. You can see the best surfers do this. If you have a watch, all of the clean footwork to and from the nose is really, really good. But where there might be some corrections or shuffles is where they are just making sure that they do a subtle adjustment back to the tail. Now, this is really important. I have no doubt that if you can complete a wave without doing any shuffling and every cross step lands you in the perfect position, then fantastic. That's a really high skill level, and that's what we should always try to aim for. But there will be times when we do need those subtle adjustments as well, and that's when I think we can use some of those shuffles. A really good way to make sure that we're adjusting our feet but not necessarily shuffling is by just moving the back foot forwards and backwards, or moving that front foot forwards and backwards, and not necessarily moving both feet at the same time. You'll see with my nose riding and with my turning, I'm constantly adjusting that back foot position. So if I want to extend my nose ride, my back foot is stepping forwards and backwards. If I want to push into a turn more and disengage the rail more, that back foot will be stepping further back towards the tail. So that's a really, really important way or thing to consider. If we don't want to incorporate those subtle adjustments, we can just move one foot without moving the other to make those adjustments happen. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, again, just let me know in the comments below. Happy to have a chat about them. Happy to talk about them next time as well. Happy to have a discussion with you if need be. If you have any other questions, or if you want anything else to be covered in this segment, tip time, having a lot of fun thinking through a lot of the questions you guys are asking. Let me know if you have any other questions. Other than that, have a great week. Hope you're scoring waves, and we'll see you in the next one.